Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
Welcome to Caribbean Perspective. So glad you can join us. The story that takes the lead in today's edition for Friday, 6th of September 2024, and brought to you in association with our friends at Antillean Group. The court dismisses defamation case against Prime Minister Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago. Details after this important message.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. The High Court of Trinidad and Tobago has dismissed the claim of defamation made against Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley by Member of Parliament for Orapooch East, Dr. Rudal Munilal. High Court Justice Carol Gobin determined that the claimant's case against the defendants is dismissed with costs. More in this TTT News item.
The High Court has dismissed the claim of defamation made against Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley by Member of Parliament for Orapooch East, Dr. Rudal Munilal. High Court Justice Carol Gobin determined that the claimant's case against the defendants is dismissed with costs. On the issue of the quantum of costs, the appropriate order should be costs on the prescribed scale. But the court will allow the parties 7 days to indicate any other view on the issue. In the lawsuit, Dr. Munilal claimed Prime Minister Rowley tarnished his character in statements alluding to corruption in the Eden Gardens housing development in Freeport. The alleged comments were made at a People's National Movement media reception on January 8, 2020. In her ruling, Justice Carol Gobin said persons choosing to enter the cut and thrust of politics do not surrender their individual right to reputation. Justice Gobin stated in cases of this type, the courts continue to balance that right on the one hand and with the right of all citizens, including their adversaries, to hold and express political views, even brutally, and the right of the press to report on them. She said politicians would do well to recognize and accept that increasingly the scales are tipping in the favor of protecting the right to free political expression in a democracy, as courts acknowledge the importance of political debate and its vital role in achieving transparency and accountability in the affairs of government and promoting the rule of law.
Long-term tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela have escalated after the United States authorities seized the luxury jet used by Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro. CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis has more.
Officials took the plane from the Dominican Republic and brought it to Florida, saying that it was a violation of U.S. sanctions. CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis is joining me now to explain how and why this all went down. So I guess that's my first question. Why was the U.S. able to seize this plane? What authority do they have?
Key to the success of this operation was moves by the authorities in the Dominican Republic, who were the ones who accommodated a U.S. request to immobilize the plane while it was on DR's territory. Now, American officials have said that the plane was flown there for service, and that's what opened the door to this opportunity to seize it and now fly it to Florida. The Justice Department said that it had been purchased illegally using a shell company based in the Caribbean and was, as you mentioned, in violation of U.S. sanctions and export control laws, and that even though it doesn't have Maduro's name explicitly associated with it, they knew that the plane was being flown pretty much exclusively to and from a military base in Venezuela. In a statement yesterday, White House officials said that this was a message being sent to Maduro that he needs to feel the consequences from his misgovernance in Venezuela.
Interesting. So can you remind us, because I think for a lot of people, the focus on Maduro recently has been over the election, but the relationship that he's had with the U.S. has been fraught for a long time. Can you sort of remind us of what the relationship has been like?
Well, this was a pretty spectacular move, but you're absolutely right that it wasn't novel in terms of how acrimonious the relationship has been between the U.S. and Venezuela and between the U.S. and Maduro in particular. The sanctions under which this plane was seized dated back to the Trump administration, and in fact, the State Department has a very open $15 million reward on Maduro's head for what were prior accusations of narco-terrorism, of drug trafficking, and corruption writ large. But the overwhelming context here is the election, which is widely disputed. Maduro has claimed victory, despite what U.S. officials have said is overwhelming evidence that it was, in fact, opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez who got more votes in this election, and it's despite the fact, or because of the fact, that Maduro has thus far refused to release any vote tallies that would substantiate his claim to victory.
Yeah, and in fact, the Venezuelan government has actually issued an arrest warrant for Edmundo Gonzalez, but only a handful of countries have actually recognized Maduro as a winner. The vast number of other countries dispute the outcome of this election. I imagine that this wasn't the first and only opportunity that the U.S. has had to seize this plane if he's flying around the world, but they chose to do it now. Can we expect further response from the U.S. should Maduro continue to maintain that he won this election?
Sure. We haven't had an official response to that arrest warrant being issued so far, but I think you can reasonably expect a denouncement from U.S. officials, condemnation. The possibility of additional sanctions on this regime is always a live possibility. But you're right that the diplomatic effort to exert pressure on Maduro has been somewhat limited. The U.S. has been at the forefront. The EU has said that they would not recognize Maduro's claims to victory, but meaningful countries in the region with which Venezuela has closer ties, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, have been somewhat more on the fence. They haven't engaged. They've called for more transparency, but haven't exactly taken a side. And so Maduro arguably feels emboldened and has accused the U.S. of this move being, an act of piracy, and the U.S. essentially overextending its reach and meddling in internal Venezuelan affairs.
A Venezuelan judge on Monday issued an arrest warrant for the opposition's former presidential candidate Edmundo Gonzalez as part of a criminal investigation into the results of the highly anticipated July election that both the ruling party and its opponents claim to have won. More in this France 24 World Report.
Charged with conspiracy, falsifying documents and usurping powers, Venezuela's main opposition figure, the country's elected president in the eyes of many, is now a wanted man, to the delight of self-proclaimed President Nicolás Maduro.
This cowardly man, González Urrutia, he doesn't recognize the law. He recognizes nothing.
In hiding since the presidential elections of late July, which he and his supporters believe he won, authorities requested the warrant after he ignored 3 summonses to answer prosecutors' questions. Tally sheets of votes produced automatically by polling machines were not published by the National Electoral Council as they usually would be, as the body claimed it had been subject to a hack, but they nevertheless proclaimed the incumbent victorious. Since, Maduro's camp have ignored pressure to publish their copies of the tally sheets, a move that drew mass protests and international condemnation, while the opposition obtained and published sheets from 80% of machines, which showed their candidate some distance ahead of the incumbent. Edmundo Gonzalez became candidate for the presidency after main opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was deemed ineligible by a court ruling, and the second choice was prevented from registering. Machado was quick to condemn the new arrest warrant.
Maduro has lost all touch with reality. The arrest warrant issued by the regime to threaten President-elect Edmundo Gonzalez crosses a new line that only strengthens the resolve of our movement. Venezuelans and democracies around the world are more united than ever in our quest for freedom.
The United States are among those refusing to recognize Maduro's victory. And on Monday in the Dominican Republic, authorities seized the luxury private jet used by him and his inner circle, citing a sanctions violation. The self-proclaimed president said the move was nothing short of piracy.
Antigua and Barbuda's government is on track to meet Wednesday's deadline for disclosure in an ongoing court case surrounding the Alfa Nero super yacht. It has also emerged the court will hear another ownership claim for the vessel from the Flying Dutchman Overseas Limited later this year. These matters are being litigated as the government has already sold the yacht and used the proceeds to pay debts. ABS's Garfield Burford reports.
The Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal ruled in favor of Russian citizen Yulia Gurrieva-Motlakov on the matter of disclosure last month. She is the daughter of the Russian oligarch who the U.S. government said was the owner of the super yacht. The court has given the government 2 weeks to disclose documents related to the decision to seize the super yacht and keep the proceeds. That 2-week period ends on Wednesday, and the government's lead attorney on this matter, Senior Counsel Anthony Astafan, says all is on track to meet the deadline.
So certain documents that were mentioned in the affidavit of the Port Authority's CEO, Mr. Darwin Telemann, and one or two other matters that they've requested documentation and information.
He says he's confident of the government's position without going into details since the matter is sub judice.
Our case is very simple, and I'm not going to say much more about it. The core question for us, and the core platform upon which we rely, was on the question, first of all, of sanctions, the boat having been abandoned, the threat the vessel presented to the environment and those using the harbour, including those who work there and live there. And the court is going to have to decide whether or not what the Port Authority and the legislation, Parliament did the legislation is constitutionally proper. We think it is, but it will be for the court to decide.
However, disclosure is not the only matter the government is dealing with.
There are other applications that they have filed that we're going to have to deal with. Look, your listeners need to understand that this is like a pitch battle, non-stop frontline warfare. That any time the judge rules one way, there's an appeal. Any application that's made, another application follows.
A separate ownership claim brought by the Flying Dutchman Overseas Limited is to be heard by the court later this year. Senior Counsel Astafan is pleased with the assistance of the legal team and the Attorney General's chambers in the ongoing matters pertaining to the vessel. The government recently sold the vessel for $40 million and has used the net proceeds to pay down on debts. These cases being litigated in the courts relate to the claimant's pursuit of compensation.
Over in Jamaica, Marsha Smith of the JLP resigns as Member of Parliament for North East St. Anne.
The writing was on the wall. Meeny tekel. Her days were numbered. Her constituents in North East St. Anne weighed the balance, and Marsha Smith was found wanting.
We're not voting. You don't have North East St. Anne with you. No I guarantee you that. No more. We are all dieted that is here. And we are not dying for Marsha Smith. No. She not even come to office. We can't see Marsha. Where is Marsha Smith? We don't want Marsha no more. We have to get rid of Marsha.
Ms. Smith's resignation was announced in a 3-sentence news release from the Office of the Prime Minister. No reason was stated, and the Prime Minister thanked her for her service.
As far as I'm concerned, for her to have resigned at this point clearly suggests that she was put under tremendous pressure, notwithstanding that from all indications she had been a failed MP based on her constituents' reactions to her.
Still, political commentator Lloyd B. Smith is questioning the timing of her resignation.
However, it would suggest to me that when a general election is so imminent, why not let her finish her term? What would be the indecent haste for? So all of this, I think, spells a lot of trouble for the JLP in terms of optics, in terms of what is going to happen to the party. Is there a gradual falling out? Are the cards beginning to unravel in terms of the House of Cards? We don't know. But clearly it is something that leaves much to be desired.
The JLP now has 2 vacant seats in the House of Representatives. The other is South Trelawney. Marissa Dalrymple Philibert also resigned. There's no word yet on her replacement. Northwest St. Andrew is also expected to become vacant when Dr. Nigel Clark leaves to take up his new role at the International Monetary Fund. Dwayne Smith is expected to replace Dr. Clark. As for Northeast St. Anne, Matthew Samuda is tipped to replace Marsha Smith. He has already been working in the area and has spoken at political meetings in the constituency.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.